What's up? I'm Syrobe, back once again with a brand new Elden Ring build that dominates in just 3 easy steps. While we all patiently wait for the release of Elden Ring's DLC Shadow of the Erdtree, I figured I'd show off something new as I am one of the last few dedicated Elden Ring channels still creating unique content for you all. This build is currently viable on patch 1.10 and likely onwards. However, and I feel like I shouldn't even need to say this, a lot of commenters keep missing that this is a PvE based channel. If you're new here, my channel has focused purely on PvE builds for over a year now. Today's build is the same and does not consider any PvP related stats or features. My previous builds are always at level 125 to show that I can easily achieve the highest damage numbers at a lower level, and to prove that people are just not efficiently min-maxing their stats and gear properly. But for some reason, when I do that, people take this as me trying to make a viable PvP build as well, purely because I'm at level 125, I think. So now, for the literal first time ever, we are making a build above level 125 on this channel at level 150 instead. I know, it's really controversial as this video is just a fun build for PvE because I feel like people forget that this is all for fun at the end of the day, and coming back to play with a build that looks like it's a lot of fun with insanely high damage numbers that are mathematically correct is all I want to create for you guys on this channel. But first, this video is sponsored by Dungeon Hunter 6, a brand new sequel in the Dungeon Hunter franchise that just released earlier this week. Dungeon Hunter 6 is a free-to-play mobile ARPG with a stunning dark fantasy-inspired art style. The gameplay features a fast-paced hack and slash with moment-to-moment engaging combat with various builds and skills to utilize as you fight massive bosses. The best part, it's absolutely free to play and completely free to download using the link in my description below or by scanning the QR code on your screen to play right now. One of the best features in Dungeon Hunter 6 is that for every boss that you successfully defeat, the game has a unique mechanic that lets you bring the defeated boss to your side and summon up to 3 of them on the battlefield to become members of your squad. When you defeat a boss, you get to keep all their loot, make them follow you around, and even use their powerful skills to help you in combat. You can also shapeshift into the bosses to harness their ultimate power when you reach the endgame. Download the game right now for free on both Android and iOS devices, and if you use my link in the description below, you get 10 summoning scrolls, bounty hunter avatar icons and accessories, and the SSR legendary lieutenant demonic wolf, all for free. Use your game account to enter the lucky spin event for free to win insane prizes like the iPhone 15 Pro Max, PlayStation 5, Apple Watch, and more. The winners will be decided at the end of October on the 29th. Once again, be sure to check out the description below for more details and sign up now to enter. Jumping straight into the build, this build is super unique and actually works really well, but in a weird way, because this build has a really fun interaction that feels super rewarding when you manage to actually pull it off. The core components of this build are the Marais Executioner Greatsword and the sorcery RANNI'S Dark Moon. Most people still haven't realized that the RANNI'S Dark Moon sorcery has 3 hidden passives built into it. When RANNI'S Dark Moon hits an enemy, it deals a ton of magic damage, and for its first hidden passive, instantly applies a debuff to reduce your target's magic defenses by 20%, which lasts for 60 seconds. Most people think that this spell just applies Frostbite, which it still does, as the second hidden passive, building up Frostbite at a rate of 270 for each successful hit. This means that you can proc Frostbite on almost every enemy and boss in Elden Ring in just 2 to 3 spell hits. When Frostbite activates, it deals 10% plus 30 flat damage of a boss's maximum HP. However, Frostbite also applies its own separate debuff like I mentioned, represented by the Icy Mist, where it reduces all enemy defensive stats by an additional 20%. These first 2 debuffs actually both stack together. For example, Radahn has 20% magic damage negation, which obviously means that your magic attacks against him are only 80% effective. But when you hit him with the sorcery RANNI'S Dark Moon and also proc Frostbite on him after 2 uses of it, this will make his defensive stats go from this normally to now this, based on the multiplicative percentage calculations. The 2 debuffs from RANNI'S Dark Moon stack multiplicatively and will reduce a target's magic resist by a total of 44%. The third hidden passive that I mentioned is that RANNI'S Dark Moon can also block spell casts from enemies. It needs to actually be fully charged, and the moon needs to start launching forward before it can do this, but as you can see here, I completely nullified the effects of the Fire Giant's Fireball spell. Another thing that's a bit tricky to pull off is that the sorcery RANNI'S Dark Moon also becomes stronger from our talisman buffs as well. Our talisman will increase the damage of our next spell cast if you cast that spell within the very small time frame of these buffs. It's really hard to pull off because the spell needs to be both casted and hit your target before the buff's duration runs out, to actually receive the damage benefits from it. The best way to use this is to lightly tap the Ash of War of the Marais Executioner in order to activate the talisman buffs, and then cast the spell straight into the ground near the enemy, which is a little bit impractical as it can be cancelled very easily, but at least it actually works this way. Now, this is where things get interesting. By utilizing the Marais Executioner Greatsword, we have a weapon that deals a mix of physical and magic damage, which receives a massive damage increase after we reduce the stats of our enemies with both of the debuffs from the sorcery RANNI'S Darkmoon. When you use the Executioner's Ash of War, it does a constant spin attack for the first portion and a follow-up slash attack after. This attack deals both physical and magic damage. If you tap and release the Ash of War very quickly, it does a really short spin instead, but if you hold the Ash of War down, it'll charge the attack longer and spins for longer too. It's important to note that you can actually cancel the animation after the spin by rolling out of it so that you aren't completely locked into the follow-up attack after you use it. When using the Ash of War, the spin counts as multiple hits and will instantly trigger the full damage buff value of both the Rotted Wing Sword Insignia and the Millicent's Prosthesis Talisman. These two talisman will buff your overall attack power by 13% from the Rotten Wing and 11% from Millicent's. This attack power buff increases the Ash of War damage on the Marais Executioner and is also further increased by the Shard of Alexander for an additional 15%. It even receives an additional 15% damage increase from the Godfrey icon. So by equipping all four of these talisman, will contribute to the highest possible damage from the Marais Executioner Ash of War. Here's how to set it up for the highest damage possible. Step 1, apply RANNI'S Darkmoon until it frostbites an enemy. Step 2, lightly tap the Ash of War quickly to activate all talisman buffs. Step 3, let it rip and absolutely melt your targets. Seems simple enough, right? But we're about to make it a little bit more complicated. The Marais Executioner deals damage based on your total attack power. So things like the poison buff from the Mushroom Crown, Kindred of Rot and Lord of Blood Talisman, Commander Standard, Terra Magica, Blood Boil Aromatic will all help and work to increase your damage further beyond what you see here, if this already wasn't overkill enough. Now for our Physicks flask, you'll need the Thorny Crack tier to also increase the strength of our Ash of War and spells, as the Thorny Crack tier functions the same way as our talisman buffs. This increases your magic damage with the Magic Shrouding Crack tier as well by 20% to really make those moons hit harder than Majora's Mask. Here's my easy setup on how to use this build efficiently. Always open up with RANNI'S Darkmoon, as their debuffs can synchronize to last 30 seconds. After the Frostbite is visibly activated, sip your Physicks flask and lightly tap the Executioner's Ash of War to do a quick spin and activate all your damage buffs. You can use this to further increase a fully charged attack of the Ash of War, so that when you let it rip like a Beyblade, you'll find yourself absolutely melting bosses. For our gear, the Snow Witch Hat boosts our moon spells by 10%, or you can use the Mushroom Crown like I mentioned earlier to increase the damage of your Ash of War even more. Then our Carrion Regal Staff also boosts our moon sorceries by an additional 10%, so make sure to use that one too in your offhand. And of course, the Staff and Marais Executioner are all at plus 10 max level. And I like to use the following talisman that I mentioned earlier as well for as much damage as possible. The Shard of Alexander, Millicent, Rotten Wing, and the Godfrey icon, all to boost the damage of Marais Executioner to the max. For my stats, we are at level 150 for the first time on this channel, as every build I've made before this has always been at 125. Make sure to start as the hero class to get the same even stats as me. 50 vigor, 20 endurance, 20 mind, 24 strength base dex, 68 intelligence base faith, and 30 arcane. These stats allow us to stay healthy and meet all the requirements for our weapons, spells, and gear. The 68 int also gives you access to any additional spells like Comet Azure, and literally anything else you could want from the sorcery spells list to receive insane damage buffs from RANNI'S Darkmoon. If you want to know where to put your points past level 150 for any returning players or high level players, sink any additional points into strength. Like I said, the Ash of War scales with your weapon's total attack power. So the more strength you have, the more damage it'll contribute to the Ash of War. This is a very fun and engaging PvE build that I'm excited to share with you all, and hope that you guys actually try this out and let me know what you think. Be sure to leave a comment, drop a fat fucking like and a massive sub, and I'll see you guys in the next video, and hopefully whenever we get announcements for the DLC. Thank you guys so much for watching and being a part of this channel. Seriously.